Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me here. My name is Nhung Ho and I'm a director of data science at Intuit. And today I'm going to share with you some of the work that my team is doing in using AI to help build resiliency for small businesses in a global economic crisis. Now, before I get into the bulk of the talk, what I want to do is just introduce you to Intuit, the company that I work for. For those of you who are not familiar with Intuit, we are the maker of TurboTax, QuickBooks, and Mint. And we serve a variety of customers from your consumers, so people like you and I, to small business owners, to those who are self-employed. And our mission is to be able to power prosperity around the world. Specifically, my team's job is to be able to help our small businesses and self-employed customers prosper through the use of applied AI and machine learning. Now, I think I need to address the elephant in the room, right? 2020. What a year so far. The way that all of us are living, the way we're working, the way we interact with each other has drastically changed just in the past 6 months. If you asked me at the beginning of the year how I thought my 2020 was going to go, I can tell you that I didn't expect everything to fall off a cliff. And it's not just for me. Every single one of us is feeling it. This is happening all around the world. It seems like everything fell off a cliff at the same time. And if you're reading the news right now, what you'll hear it described as this is a once in a generation event. And I think that that description is true if you're 14 years old or younger. But in my lifetime, just in the past 15 years, this is the second once in a generation event that has occurred. When I started my PhD in 2007, within 6 months, a global economic crisis happened in 2008. Right, what you see here is a chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and over the period of 6 to 8 months, it fell by 50%. And I distinctly remember living through it and waiting until I was done with my PhD 6 years later to see things recover. And until January of this year, anytime we described 2008, we said that's an anomaly. That's not going to happen again. It will happen only once in your generation. And then 2020 happened. And now we're all living through a second once in a generation event. And so to me, what this signals is that these large worldwide economic events are actually no longer anomalies. We cannot remove them from our models. We cannot smooth over the results. And we need to be able to actually build with them going forward. And, in a normal environment, in a normal world, running a small business is already not easy. But in the current environment, it is incredibly difficult. The off-site statistic that you'll hear is that 50% of small businesses expect to fail in the first 5 years. When small businesses were surveyed during COVID-19, what we see is actually 52% of small businesses expect to be out of business within the next 6 months. And that is a significant contraction compared to before, right? It is really difficult times right now, and there's a significant amount of uncertainty. And what's interesting is that when we looked into our data and we looked at our small business customers and we said, where are customers hurting? It very clearly shows up based on the industry that the small business is in. What you see here is a stack ranking of the top 10 most impacted industries among our small business customers, right? These are sorted by a decrease in revenue. And what you see is that your beauty shops, your barber shops, they're seeing a 50% decrease in revenue. But what's also equally fascinating is that consumer behavior has changed significantly. Where there are industries that have suffered quite a bit, there are also others who are experiencing some boom times. Very top retail nurseries and garden stores are seeing an almost 12% increase in revenue. And this is just over the first 2 to 3 months of this global pandemic, right? If you're like me and you decided to pick up gardening over this time period, congratulations, you're not alone. You're actually part of a group of consumers who are actually changing the trend of where we're spending our money and actually boosting up certain industries. But across all these industries, the thing that we hear most often, pre-pandemic and especially now, is that our small businesses are anxious. They want to know, what is my current cash position? Do I have enough money to make it through to the next month? And if you can imagine the level of anxiety for this pre-COVID-19, think about what's happening now. And when we talk to our customers, these are some of the things that we're hearing, right? If the virus doesn't kill me, the stress is going to kill me. You're afraid for your physical health, you're afraid for your financial health. Second customer, my entire industry has had the rug pulled out from under it. And then finally, most of us don't really have a lot of cash on hand to survive something like this, where you have no revenue coming in. And so you can see how incredibly stressful this can be and is to a large portion of small business customers. So my team and I have been working for about 2 years now to be able to help our customers really understand their cash position, right? We've worked with our development teams to build the cash flow planner. And what it allows our users to do is be able to analyze their historical patterns. And also what we do is we forecast and project forward so that our small businesses can make better decisions about money in and money out. And honestly, when we started this project, we really did not expect this to happen right now and for our product to be so incredibly timely. We actually released this January 31st of this year. And so it's just been incredible seeing its impact and its effect on our customers. Now, when we first started solving the cash flow problem, as I mentioned, it was about 2 years ago. I would say that the way that we constructed our hypothesis and constructed the problem is maybe a little bit naive. So going based off of our understanding that what our users want to be able to do is to be able to see their cash balance right now at this point in time, see where that came from, and also be able to project forward. But if you can imagine as a standard person, right, it's actually not that easy. You need to be able to model in how much money are you taking in and how much money are you spending. And when you expand that to a small business, it becomes incredibly complex because the patterns for the money in and the patterns for the money out can be quite different. You have periodicity that you need to account for. Certain streams are periodic. There are very random streams. There are cash in and cash out streams that are never repeated again. And so all of that needs to be modeled out. And finally, it's not just simple cash in and cash out. They actually are aggregates of individual streams of cash in. An example of that is an invoice or a sale or cash out. Examples are payroll and taxes. And so, as you can see, what we started was on the right. We thought it was a simple problem where we just aggregate a bunch of time series together and build a forecast. Becomes a much more complicated problem where we're now needing to construct individual models for every single transaction stream rolled up by type and be able to start from there on the left at a very, very granular level, at as granular as we can get, identify the patterns in each of those streams, be able to build models that generate predictions, aggregate those predictions by type and time, and then we can display that to the user so that they can answer questions like, will I be able to have cash available on Wednesday? Can I make my payroll? Can I spend this money today? Right? And also, is my cash going to be low? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into two of these transaction streams and just go into slightly a little bit more detail so you can understand our approach and how we solve this. So the first one is invoices. It's a type of money in transaction. And at its core, invoices are needed to turn payments due into cash. So for those of you who are not familiar with invoices, don't worry, 6 years ago, I wasn't either. But really what an invoice is a way for you as a person to provide a service and then bill your customers for that service later on. I think an example is if you are a consultant, right? You don't exactly know how much time you're going to spend on any one project. What you want to do is be able to give the customer an idea of how much you do your work, and at the end of that work, you say, okay, I have spent 56 hours on this project. You bill them, you set a due date, and then they pay you before that due date in the ideal scenario. But what you see here in QuickBooks Online is that small businesses who invoice quite a bit may have a whole host of customers who they need to follow up with, many of whom may not be paying on time. And so if you click into one of these invoices, there are two important aspects to it. The first one is the balance due, but the other piece that is important is when is this due? So when you think about this problem more holistically and you take a step back, it's actually a two-stage problem. There are two distinct questions that we need to be able to answer in order to provide our small businesses with the right solution. The first one is, will this invoice be paid? And to do that, we built a classification model to predict whether or not the invoice is likely to be paid or not. Underneath the hood, it's a classic GBT model with class weight tuning because we have a large class imbalance. But the other more important problem is, when is this invoice going to be paid? And we need to be able to actually turn that into a prediction, identify around what data is going to be paid so that we can equip our customers with an ability to follow up. And it's especially important to be really, really careful here because you don't want to constantly err on the side of false positives, right? If you tell your customer or your small business in this case that all of their clients are going to be paying late, they're going to spend a significant amount of time needing to follow up with these clients. That's time lost, but also doesn't instill a lot of confidence between the clients and their small businesses. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the model in a few more slides and talk about specifically confidence intervals. But before I get into that, what I want to tell you is how we constructed the data set. So you have two entities interacting with each other here. On the one side, you have small businesses who are sending invoices, and on the other side are their clients who are receiving services and needing to pay these invoices, right? One of the important things for us here is that because each set of clients is considered proprietary for each small business, we had to actually separate out the data and make sure that there's no information leakage, right? An example of that is just because a client perpetually pays late for one small business doesn't mean that they're going to perpetually pay late for another small business that they work with. And so the way that we do this is, I think, fairly standard in time series modeling. You split the data up temporally, and then you clip it by time into training, validation, and test set. So you build your model in the training set, you validate that, do your parameter tuning on the validation set, and then you test forward with a data set that you haven't seen before. And we do this for every single small business across the 4 million or so small businesses that we have. As I mentioned before, there are two distinct problems we're trying to solve. One is a classification problem to predict whether or not the small business's client is going to default on their payment. And the other is a regression problem where we need to be able to predict the date within which we think that invoice is going to be paid. Now, the input features for both of these models are the same, or at least fairly similar. There are features related to the small business, there are features related to their clients, and then a whole host of temporal features, including have they ever paid late, and also when did this invoice go out. As I mentioned previously, one of the things that we did was really narrow in on making sure that we can provide confidence intervals, because what our users expect to be able to see is this go forward forecast with an ability for them to say, can I actually trust this prediction or not? And so the way that we did that is we modeled confidence intervals with the quantile loss GBT. And so to underneath the hood, what happens is that we built models with different Q levels set. So start with a standard Q level of 50%, and that gives you your 50% dispersion around the predicted date. So essentially you can turn that 50% into a confidence intervals. And we modeled a whole host of different Q levels. Now, how does this show up to our users? So if you go right now into the cash flow planner in QB Cash, this is what you see if you've connected a bank account. We pull up all of your transactions ordered by recency, and then we provide a look forward forecast. I want to highlight your attention here in this box, which is that you'll see this nice little light bulb that says this invoice is likely to be paid late. And if you click into that, we'll tell you when the original due date was, but also we go into and provide you two possible dates, one at 50% likelihood and one at 80% likelihood. And the reason why we chose that is actually we did a whole host of customer interviews and tried to really understand how we provide them a view into confidence intervals and which intervals will actually instill the most confidence, right? And if you actually click in a little bit more about how this works, and this is a feature that a lot of our customers asked for because they want to be able to understand, well, how did you come up with this number? We share a little bit more into how this was constructed. And what we found is this instills quite a lot of confidence in our users. They're able to then say, okay, I understand how this was created. I can now have a certain sense of confidence in this forecast that you've provided, and then this is how I'm going to take action from it. So the next example that I'm going to go into is on the sales side. How do we model sales? And so, as I mentioned, invoices are for services that you've completed and are billing in the future. Sales are actually paid immediately. Anytime you use a credit card is considered a sale. You go to an ice cream shop and you purchase an ice cream cone, you send them your you give them your credit card, and that's a sale. And so what I show here is a sales volume over time for a small business. And it's a very nice curve. This is for a customer who gets a lot of business. Things are flowing in at a regular cadence. So I'd say this is a very easy time series and problem to model. Where it gets really, really difficult is when you have a lot of sparse sales data. So what does this mean to have sparse sales? So I'll give you an example. If you run a store that sells Halloween costumes, right, and so Halloween is at the end of October, you expect the bulk of your sales to occur in the month leading up to Halloween. But throughout the rest of the year, things are probably pretty slow. Maybe you'll have a sale here and there, but you expect the bulk of your sale to happen in one go. And so this is an example of the type of businesses that are extremely bursty and peaky, right? Where again, most of your sales volume is pretty low throughout the year. And then you get this really huge delta function during the time period where you do your business, and then it slows down quite a bit. And so how do you reconcile these two worlds where you have data rich, where you have small businesses who are making sales, hundreds and hundreds of sales every single day, to those who make hundreds and hundreds of sales in one single day? And so the way that we deal with that is we use hurdle models, which can handle zero count events. And the reason why we do this is that we can't guarantee that a small business is not going to have a 0 day, right? Holidays is an example. Some businesses are closed on certain holidays, others are closed on a certain day of the week. And so this allows us a significant amount of flexibility to be able to smooth out and model those results as well. As I mentioned previously, what I showed you was data of how revenue for small businesses changed significantly by industry due to COVID-19. What I'm going to show next is how sales have been significantly impacted by COVID-19. What you see here is our weekly sales normalize between 0 to 100 across a period of about 4 months or so. This blue line is a representative mean of weekly sales for a sample set of companies selected from major cities across a bunch of sectors that were hit by the pandemic. And what you see here is, again, after Christmas, things are a little bit slow, but things start picking up again for summer. But at the beginning of March, things significantly slid down quite a bit. Like that is a massive decrease in the number of sales. And we don't show the data here for the past 3 months, but the trend continues forward. Um, if you recall, we said that one of the industries that was hit hardest were beauty and nail salons. And you see that in the data right here, right? This is for nail salons in Los Angeles. What you see is that when COVID-19 hit, when the lockdown started in California at the beginning of March, the sales volume dropped precipitously, actually 100%, in fact. Um, and as you go forward in time, as things begin to reopen, you see sales recover a little bit here and there, but it's not at the rate where it was before. It's not at the volume where it was before. And so what we are now doing is going back and saying, okay, these are clearly not just anomalies, as I mentioned, right? You don't have two anomalous, like once in a generation events anymore. So these anomalies are no longer anomalies, and we just have to deal with it in the data. We need to be able to model this out to help our small businesses be able to say, okay, I'm going through this situation. How am I going to make it through this situation? How am I going to understand my cash flow? What does my cash flow look like during this period? And will this recovery be enough to get me through so that I can survive until the end of the year? One of the things that's been extremely satisfying for me as a data scientist is to be able to do this type of work to solve really big problems for our customers. As we're going through this unprecedented time right now, what we're working on is fine-tuning our model so that we can continue to better serve our users and the product. And if you go right now to QB Cash, you can open up the cash flow planner and start playing around with it and see if it can be insightful for you. Um, I think one of the things that's been extremely gratifying throughout this entire process is that uh, just by pure chance, we rolled this out at the very beginning of this year, and that got into the hands of our customers. And what we're hearing from our customers is that they found this ability to forecast and project their cash flow actually significant in helping them survive. Right? I'm just going to show you two quotes here and read them out very quickly. The first one is it's critical because it lets us know how we're doing. Are we financially healthy? And are the next few months going to be difficult? Are there purchases that don't need to be made so that they can make it past this hump? Second customer has told us it's been tremendously helpful to be able to juggle people expenses, right? They didn't have to lay anyone off. They're able to find opportunities here and there to save so that they can stretch their payroll and keep all their employees on payroll until we make it through this. And we're really just getting started on this journey, right? As I showed you, the cash flow problem is actually incredibly complex. There are multiple different types of cash flow situations. Each one of those cash flow streams requires a separate model. And each one of those models has a massive amount of opportunity to be able to make a difference in a customer's life. When we originally started on this work, we built our models for the US population, but because of COVID, we very quickly turned these models on for all the global geos that we operate in. And so now the cash flow planner is available in the UK as well as Australia to help small businesses around the world really understand their cash flow and be able to survive and make it through COVID-19. And it's not just about small businesses. We're looking to expand this and get it into the hands of consumers. So people like you and I would love to be able to move all of my information away from this crazy spreadsheet that I have that I keep track of to one planning tool that helps me get that bird's eye view of my cash situation. And so if this is the type of problem that is interesting to you or is a type of space that you would like to contribute in, please connect with me afterwards. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much for providing me this opportunity, and I'm going to open it up for Q&A now. Thank you.